Yes, I'm still here, Hollywood. And coming up on today's episode, he made his film debut in one of the most iconic adventure movies of all time, only to be impaled by spikes in the opening scene. Since then, he's built one of the most versatile and respected careers in Hollywood, moving seamlessly between stage and screen, indie gems, and superhero box office smashes. This is Still Here Hollywood. I'm Steve Kmetko. Join me with today's guest, actor Alfred Molina. Alfred, thanks for coming in and talking with us today.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
Sitting down to talk to us. You know, I think if you told some people that you were in that famous death scene in Raiders of the Lost Ark, they'd have to go back and look at it again because they probably didn't know it was you right off the bat.
Yeah.
Has that stuck with you? Have people come up to you over the years?
Yeah, but it's always very pleasant. I mean, what happens often is that people, particularly people who are of the same generation, will say things like, "Oh, that was the first movie where I noticed you," or "I remember you in that movie." But what's really gratifying is when younger people, you know, young film fans, like in their 20s, people who know me, say, from the Spiderman movies, then kind of go, "Oh my God, you were the guy in Raid," you know, or they're doing a deep dive into Spielberg's movies, or someone tells them, "You've got to watch this movie. You know, this is what started it all," or whatever. And yeah, there's a lot of surprise because I was 26, something like that, and it's I mean, but that movie, it was my first film.
Really?
Oh yeah, very first. I'd never stepped in front of a camera before that. So it was a calling card. It was my introduction to film. It's when I fell in love with movies. So it's been a great gift, you know, all these years.
The first time you saw it, what was your reaction since it was your first film?
Well, I kind of loved it, and I sort of. You know, I was rather proud of myself in a sort of silly way, but it was when the film was released, when as we were shooting it, because I had no experience in film, I didn't really know how films worked. I wasn't really technically I wasn't technically sort of geared up for it. I didn't understand the technique or cutting or editing. I didn't understand any of the techniques. So we would shoot a scene, and then I would go to Dailies the next day to watch that scene or takes of the scene, and I would see things that I did that I thought, "Oh no, that's terrible. You know, I sort of did this too much. That's too much." And then I would come in the next day to work with an attitude that trying to fix what I saw before. Which was pointless, of course, because I didn't really understand the technique of, like, you know, there are takes, you take the best bits and you put them together. I didn't understand the editing skills. So I was really learning on the job, and that was kind of a bit difficult because I didn't quite understand what was going on. I mean, I'll give you an example. The focus puller would put tape on the floor, you know, to give the actor a guide as to where to stand and, you know, to staying focused. I had no idea what that was for. Nobody explained it to me. So I thought it was something to do with what they were doing. I thought, well, it doesn't nothing to do with me. So I completely ignored them. And I would be in and out. And now, Dougie Slocum, who was the movie's lighting cameraman, who was a legend, you know, he was a legend. He could have very easily sent someone to tell me, you know, hit your marks, these, you know. But he came round from behind the camera, like a real gentleman. He came round behind the camera and he said, "We love what you're doing, but it would be absolutely wonderful if we could get it in focus." And then he explained what these bits of tape were for. And then, of course, you know, the penny dropped. But that's how green I was, you know, that's how naive I was. So watching Dailies was a bit of a torture because it was kind of, I was just seeing myself having to correct. And then eventually, I think after about a few days, it was Steven Spielberg who suggested I don't go to Dailies.
Really?
Yeah, because I think he understood, he could see that I wasn't understanding that Dailies are essentially a technical reference. They're all about, did we get the lighting right? Is the makeup okay? Do the costumes work? You know, the contrast between the actors and the background, is all of that stuff. That's all really what the dailies are about. But of course, when I saw the film, the finished film, I was delighted, you know, and the fact that, but the irony is, of course, that my character gets his like within like 7 minutes or something. But because that little portion of the movie had nothing to do with the rest of the film, they mined that 7 minutes for all the trailers. So it was me and Harrison all over the trailers. So people are kind of calling me and saying, Fred, you got this great big part in this movie. I said, no. If you go to the bathroom, you're going to miss me. I mean, you know, make sure you get your popcorn early. But it was a treat. It was a delight. I was honoured to be in it. I still feel like as for a young actor, for his first film, I mean, it was a blessing, absolute blessing, and not just creatively and in terms of my career. It was you know, personally, you know, my partner at the time and I were about to have a baby. We were broke. The money that I was working in the theatre, earning literally union scale, and suddenly this movie comes along and offers me, you know, for 2 weeks' work, what I thought was a huge chunk of money. I mean, it was, you know, I'd never seen money like it as an actor, and it meant we could have our baby in a, you know, who's now 45.
Has it been that long?
Yeah. You know, we had her in a modicum of comfort, which we couldn't have afforded without that movie. So I've thanked Steven publicly and privately, and I will keep on thanking him many times over for that opportunity, because it really it set me on a course that has been a great blessing.
If memory serves, that was the first of its kind, the first of adventure film like that.
Absolutely, yeah.
And it was huge.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think that's why people still get to see it, because people refer to it that way. It's revered in that sense. You know, it was the very first kind of, it was in a way the beginning of this genre that we now call them tentpole movies, or, you know, but it really was the beginning. And I think to be a small footnote in the history of that development in film is a great thing, and I will always be thankful.
And then you hear that John Williams score.
Oh my God!
And it immediately conjures a particular kind of movie.
Absolutely. And it was just, the whole thing was just so satisfying in a way. The locations and the just the excitement of it, the storytelling, the humour. That's the other thing, of course, that I found really delightful about the film, was just, even through all the danger and all the action, it still kept this wonderful level of humour and an exciting kind of. There was always a laugh, and there was always something delightful about it. And I think it was one of those movies that was a kind of total. It was like totally satisfying.
Now, at that time, they were big. Spielberg was big, and Harrison Ford was big, but they got even bigger as a result of that film.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I mean the excitement I felt when my agent, you know, said, "Can you?" I was on tour at the time. I was doing a tour of a production of Oklahoma, and we were playing sort of, you know, theatres all around and I was somewhere up in the north of England, and my agent said, "Is there any chance you could get down over the weekend on your day off, and, you know, so you can?" So I came down on the Saturday night after the show, because in England. Theatres are dark on Sundays. So I came down Saturday, had Sunday at home, went to an interview, I think, on Monday morning, and then got back up north for the show in the evening. And do you want to go and be seen for a movie directed by Steven Spielberg, starring Harrison Ford and Karen Allen? It was like, yeah. It was like there was no question about it. And I was really nervous. I remember the interview. It was nerve-wracking, but because you suddenly realised, if this works out, I'm going to be working with some great film talent. You know, so I just knew. I wasn't conscious of it in the sense at the time, but I just knew somehow that this would be a great learning experience. This would be something that would really teach me something.
You've worked with some really great directors, Steven Spielberg, Sam Raimi.
Yeah.
Early in your career, how has that stayed with you all this time?
Well, every time it's a kind of it's an opportunity. Every time, I think, to learn something new, to get a different perspective on the work, to get involved in a story that otherwise you wouldn't. Particularly when it's a director who you've worked with, you're working with for the first time, and if the material is very, very varied, and I've been lucky that way. That I've done adventure films. The next big film I did after Raiders. I think I went off and did a movie with Mike Leigh, Meantime, which was I think his last made-for-TV movie before he started making features. And look at that cast. We had Tim Roth, Gary Oldman. It was kind of an amazing, Marion Bailey, an amazing cast. And then after that, the next film I did was with God rest his soul, Dick Donner.
Oh, yeah, right.
So it was kind of the variance and the range of people I got a chance to work with was really quite phenomenal, and I was very appreciative of it because I learnt something wonderful from all of them. And the nice thing, of course, is when you go back and you can work with directors more than once. I've had the joy of working with some directors more than once. Julie Taymor. Is a perfect example of that, and it's just that. And then, of course, you have a rapport. You have a kind of language that you can, that is wonderfully creative. So the range has been phenomenal, and I've, as I say, I've been very appreciative of it.
Do you recognize a certain quality that is similar in each one of those directors?
Well, I can say, hand on heart, I can say that in all honesty, I've only once, I think, worked with a director who I didn't understand. Now, I've worked with directors who I didn't quite get on with necessarily, but I've only once worked with a director that I just didn't get what the vision was. I just didn't get it, and that was very, very difficult. But I always reckoned that was my fault. I would never have blamed the director. That was my problem. Whether it was cultural or the mood I was in or where I was I've no idea. But it's only happened the once. And what I have noticed with all the directors that I've worked with, it's certainly 95% of them, is that I've always enjoyed the journey. Whether it's been a difficult one or an easy one or a job that I've loved or a job that I've not loved quite so much. I mean, we don't always get to do the perfect gig. Sometimes, I've done jobs where I've really done it for the money, or I've done it because I didn't have anything else to do and I was desperate to work. Or, there's all kinds of reasons why we take on work. But I've always enjoyed the journey and I've always learnt something. And I think that's because I wasted my time at school. I wasted the years when I was getting educated.
So did I.
I kind of did. Well, then you know what I'm talking about. I kind of wasted that time, and ever since then, I've always been. I feel there's a gap in my understanding of things. There's a gap in my education. There's a gap in my sort of worldliness, if you like. So every time I work, I'm trying to learn something, trying to fill that gap.
Do you ever have those moments, as I do, where you say to yourself, why didn't I pay closer attention?
Oh yeah, all the time.
Oh really?
All the time. All the time. I read hardly any fiction. Everything I read is non-fiction. And I read a lot. I'm a reader. But it's all non-fiction. I read biographies, I read his history, I read books on all kinds of subjects because I'm just desperate to kind of understand more. I never I didn't have that capacity when I was at school or at college, even at drama school. You know, when I was, working, training to be an actor.
Where did you go to drama school?
I went to the Guildhall School of Music and Drama, which is which was one of the top schools in the world, actually. And it was a fantastic training. But I was there. I graduated in 1975. I was there from 72 to 75, and we were, I think, I might be wrong, but I think we were the last generation of actors who were trained in what I would call the kind of classical tradition, in the sense that there was no training to do with film or television or any of the new, sort of media. The most technologically advanced class we had was called microphone technique, which was really preparing us for radio drama. But all the training was absolutely geared and focused on theatre. The assumption was that you would leave, graduate, and then you would go and join a rep company somewhere and work your way through the company. Then maybe you'd go to another rep, and then you'd work your way around the country. Then maybe come to London and do a play in the West End. That was the trajectory that was the standard trajectory for actors for, 100 years before us. There was no, because, cinema and television was rather, not looked down on, but it was rather secondary, so making films, now, but which of course is very different now, because now young actors, from what I understand, the chances are their first job on is going to be a screen job. They're more likely to get a job, making a commercial or doing a TV show or a movie, than they are going into the theatre for any length of time.
Did your classical training help or hinder you in Hollywood?
Well, I think it's helped in a way, because the one thing I did learn and I did understand was how to read a script, how to break down a script, and how to get a sense of where the character was and where the character was going, and what was needed to kind of bring this character to life. And I think that was a lot to do with the training we had, sort of working on classical text and so on. And it also gave us a certain level of physical stamina. We used to do this thing where you'd have to try and do 6 lines of iambic pentameter on one breath, stuff like that. I mean, which nowadays I find impossible to do, but when I was younger I could do it, but not now. But it'd be things like that. So there were things that did help. But at the same time, the great thing about our industry is the egalitarianism of it. That you can have an actor who's just spent 3 or 4 years getting trained at the best conservatories in the world, and you could have some young kid who's just come off the street, and they can both be just amazing. And they can both come with something so special and so exciting that, because and the proof of that is that I don't think I've ever been asked where I did my training. Like, I've never been in an interview or an audition where someone said, by the way, did you train? Are you trained? No one's ever asked me that, and I don't think it's, because I think it's, in the end, it was a wonderful 3 years. I loved it. But in the end, it's almost irrelevant, I think.
One of the things I'd like to ask you about is Doctor Octopus. What was your thought the first time you saw yourself on screen with the arms and...
Well, I thought it was brilliant. Brilliant. I loved it. See, the thing is, Steve, I'm not just an actor that works on film. I'm also a film fan. I love movies, so I can watch those movies, and and every now and again I'll go back and I'll watch them, and I'm not sort of looking at myself. I'm kind of looking at the movie, because the movie's like so much fun. Particularly the first iteration when I played Doc Ock in Sam Raimi's Spiderman 2. And the second time I did it, when we did Spider-Man, Far From Home, or No Way Home, forgive me, the technology had changed so much in the intervening 16 or 17 years that in the first one, the tentacles were all mechanical. Some of it was CGI, a lot of it was just puppetry. So each tentacle had a puppeteer who was doing all kinds of things with it, to keep them alive. And in fact, we had sometimes each tentacle had two puppeteers. So there were scenes where when I was throwing an arm to kind of try and get Spidey, it was all harnessed up. They were built. They were on me, and they were kind of swinging them around. By the time we got to 17 years later, everything was digital. I didn't have anything on. I'd have the costume, but I didn't have any arms. I didn't even see the arms. I hardly ever saw them, and that was all done digitally. So all I had to do then was I'd go like this, and then they'd put all that on, afterwards. So it's completely different. It was a very, very different experience. And the first time, I had the whole harness with the arms weighed about 30, 40 pounds.
Wow.
So that's why we had puppeteers, because I couldn't walk around on my own with it. But we had we named them. We named the four tentacles Harry, Larry, Flo, and Mo. And Flo was the top right-handed one, because that was the one that was very delicate. That was the one that had to kind of pick up the cigar and pick up the glass of scotch and stuff like that, light the match. That was the one that had the kind of the finesse things to do. So she was Mo. And it was, we had so much fun, to the point where I got some, Kirsten Dunst and Tobey Maguire, they had their entourages, their people that looked after them, and they became known as the Kirsten Crew, and a Team Toby, I think it was. So I decided I didn't have an entourage. It was just me. So I got some T-shirts made up for me and the puppeteers, and we called ourselves the Octorage. And those T-shirts became very popular. Cost me a fortune.
Back with more in a moment. If you'd like to be more involved with us at Still Here Hollywood, you definitely can. Just visit patreon.com/StillHereHollywood. You can support us for as little as $3 a month. You can get our episodes a day before they post anywhere else. You can see what guests will be coming up and submit questions for them. You can even tell us what stars you want us to have on as guests. You'll see what goes on before and after the episode, plus exclusive behind-the-scenes info, pics, video, and more. Again, that's patreon.com/StillHereHollywood. You said as a person, you love movies.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite? Not that you did, but that you enjoyed watching.
Always have, loads of favourites. I mean, in the UK when I was growing up, there was always the traditional Christmas Day movie. It was either on BBC or ITV. There was the Christmas Day movie, and it was very often one of two or three. Wizard of Oz was always a popular one. Singing in the Rain was another one. And It's a Wonderful Life. And they would kind of rotate. So you knew you were going to get to see a really good film on Christmas Day. And I think it was on the BBC, because it was all kind of with that no ads. And that was like a big thing. People would settle down. You'd time your Christmas lunch or Christmas dinner around the movie, because you didn't want to get interrupted. And at my house, with my parents, we had dinner first. We had a Christmas lunch, because then we'd sit down, and I remember, the movie would be on, I'd be watching it, my dad would probably fall asleep, my mum kind of was doing something, but I was hooked, and I remember seeing those movies and just loving the moment of being in a movie, and even now, today, going to a cinema and watching the logo come up, the 20th Century Fox logo or Columbia or whatever it is, just watching those lovely kind of visuals of the noise, the music and the color, and it's just, it's kind of, it sort of sets you up for an event somehow, and I've never been a great one for eating popcorn and stuff during a film. I know people love it. I have friends who can't watch a film without popcorn, but I'm okay, you know. But I love to just kind of be present for it, you know. And it's still a bit of an event for me to go and see a movie. And I think because COVID denied us the chance to do that for a couple of years, I think now, as people are coming back, we're having to re-educate ourselves and rediscover the habit, if you like, of going to see films.
Do younger fans recognize you from Spider-Man more than anything else?
Yeah, mostly. It's an odd. It's young people who and their dads, young kids and their dad. You know, young men and women who are like in their 40s, who kind of saw the movies when they were younger, and they've now got young kids, and you know, and they're kind of, you know, you want to watch this. You know, I love this film when I was a kid. When I was your age, you're going to watch this, and so there's that. And the wonderful thing, of course, is that I was very lucky in that I got to play one of the most popular villains, and I think Doc Ock is still, you know, up there in the, you know, top 5, you know, of popular villains, and that's been a real privilege.
Well, I think for audiences, especially younger audiences, it's much easier to grasp a villain and hold on to it.
Yeah.
Look at The Wicked Witch of the West.
Oh, yeah, absolutely right.
I think she was voted by the American Film Institute the #1 villain of all time. She was a good one, and she wasn't even on screen that much.
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
Margaret Hamilton did a number with that role. You've played complex men, some deeply flawed. Do you ever take those emotional residues home with you, or are you good about leaving them at the studio and picking them up the next day?
Well, it depends who you ask. I like to think that I leave them at work, but various people in my life have said, you know, well, actually, Fred, that's not quite the case. That's not always the case. I think what happens is that you're always actually not. When I can't say we, you know, I can only speak for myself. But what I find is when I'm working on something, particularly if it's something that's kind of making demands on me in terms of physicality, or, you know, a lot of lines, or, you know, there's something difficult about the part, you know, in some way, something challenging, I find myself getting very preoccupied, like it's all I can think about. I'm at work, and then I'm thinking about the next day, and then I'm at home and I'm getting ready for the next day. I'm looking at my lines for the next day. I'm thinking about what we're going to do, all the stuff that we still owe, or, you know, I'm just in the work all the time. But I don't think I'm kind of like playing the role, you know, sort of like coming home and, like, you know, smashing things up, or, you know, whatever the character does. I don't think it's that, but that's the best way I can describe it. I think it's a kind of preoccupation. You know, it's the first thing on my mind. It's the last thing on my mind when I fall asleep. It's the first thing on my mind when I wake up. But I'm still functioning in the world. You know, I'm still kind of, you know, having my breakfast and saying goodbye to my wife, and, you know, all the rest of it. But it's in there, and I think that's part of the craft in a way. That's part of what keeps it. You know, you're working on it. I think that's. I can only speak for myself, but I would imagine that's the case for most of us.
I interviewed Betty Davis once, and I asked her a similar question, and she said, "No. I take my roll off, I leave it at the studio, and I pick it up the next day." You know.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people do. A lot of people do. I mean, and people, and of course, there's lots of examples of actors who go absolutely the other way, you know, and just can't get out of it. You know, they're just in it, and I think whatever methodology you're using, I think, is, as long as it gets the job done, it's kind of valid, I think.
What keeps bringing you back to the stage?
It's like Someone said it's like a bad habit you can't quite give up. It's sort of like you should know better, but you just do it. I think what keeps me wanting to do, coming back to the set, is because ultimately it's a great place to live. And as much as I love movies and making films and working on television, I love screen work. There's something about working in the theatre that's so unique that no other medium can give it to you. And I think it's to do with the fact that, and I'm speaking very generally now, in general terms, but film is the director's medium. Television is the writer's medium, because writers are more often than not the showrunners. But theatre really belongs to the actor. Once rehearsals are done, once you've opened, the director might be hovering around every now and again, throwing the odd note, but actually getting the job done every night, 8 times a week, that's the actor and the stage crew. It's theirs. It belongs to us. And whatever happens, whatever joy happens, whatever terrible disasters happen, it's our responsibility. And I think it's the only place where we feel that. It's the only place that gives us that kind of visceral excitement of the moment, the event. You can get lines wrong, you can get moves wrong in television and film, and you can just stop and go back, or turn it into some kind of happy accident. But you'll always get another chance immediately. You can't do that on stage.
Can you think of a happy accident you've had?
Yeah, I can give you a perfect example of a happy accident.
Great.
When we did, because it's one I've quoted before, when we did Boogie Nights, the scene where I'm kind of like completely high on coke, and the 3 boys are like, on the sofa trying to do the deal, and we've got the young kid kind of lighting the firecrackers, just lighting them ad lib, and he's just lighting them any old time. The way that Paul Thomas Anderson set that scene up is that he wanted the young actor who was playing the young kid lighting the firecrackers. Those firecrackers were full bore. They were like, full capacity sort of explosion, which I think drove the sound department crazy. But the reason he wanted them like that, and he told that young actor, just light them whenever you want. Don't stick to cues, just do it whenever you want. Because what he wanted to create was a mood where, the 3 of them, Thomas Jane and, and Mark and John, they were like on the sofa. They didn't know when it was coming. So every time they jumped in that scene, those wonderful moments when they're literally jumping out of their chair, out of the sofa, that was absolutely for real. They just didn't know when it was coming. But he didn't want me to react that way. So we plugged up my ears. One was completely plugged up, and the other one was plugged up with an earwig, so I could hear the dialogue. So what I heard when the young guy who was lighting the fire, what I heard was like a dull thud, like a. I didn't need to react. I didn't have to react to it. It didn't make me react, which created this weird atmosphere in the scene. These loud noises, and I'm just kind of like floating through it on this kind of sea of like cocaine and drugs and alcohol. And there's a bit when I start moving out of the frame, when I stand up and I have to refer to the young boy, and I forgot my line. And I ad-libbed a line, and I just went, "Oh, that's Cosmo. He's Chinese." And then I kind of took my move. And at the time I thought, "Oh shit, gonna have to do that again, load up all the firecrackers again, it's gonna drive everyone nuts." And eventually, and Paul just kind of went, "That's great, he loved it." And that was that was my ad lib, and he kept it in the movie, and that was I was delighted by that. That kind of made me very happy.
How many directors you've worked with are willing to go with the flow, and not necessarily stick to the idea or the perception they had going in?
Well, I think as a rule, most directors are open to happy accidents. I think they're open to a nice idea that works. I think what a lot of directors find difficult is when actors come in and kind of go, I've got another idea, and they haven't even tried what's been prescribed. I think, and that's something I think my training has given me, is a very deep respect for a very deep respect for the script, because I know that before I step on a soundstage, some people, the writer, the director, perhaps more than one writer, have been working very, very hard to get that script to a point where they hope is, sort of production ready. So I think the least thing you can do is, at least try the script.
Give it a shot.
Give it a shot at least. And, most of the time it works. But, rather than coming, I remember one of the things that stuck with me all these years, and I know it may sound rather pedantic of me, but I don't care. I'm too old, too tired, can't be bothered. Is the one thing I can't stand is when I hear actors say, I don't think my character would say this. And it's something that was drilled into me when I was a young student, which was, no, that's not the state. The question is, how do I make my character say this? It's the idea of dragging the character to some favorite version of yourself is absolute anathema to me. My job is to take myself to it. But I've worked with directors who are very strict. Are very strict about the script, about the final version of the script. Mike Leigh, for instance, he would work. He works in conjunction with the actors. They devise the script, or they all devise the script together. But the final version is essentially his decision. What they arrive at, he's the one that says, okay, this is the version we're going with, and that's what you stick to. Other directors can be very loose, very kind of, whatever, try, whatever you want to do. I mean, I did a Woody Allen movie. I was cut out of it. It was called Celebrity. It was the one with Ken Branagh. And I was only in 2 scenes. And there was one little scene, it was a very, very nice scene where Ken's character comes to visit me, and I've got a bit of a crisis going on. And I remember Mr. Allen's note was always, well, we'll do a version of the script, but then you do whatever you like. You can say whatever you like. Just get the sense across. You can say whatever you like. Which was incredibly I thought was incredibly kind of like free and easy, very kind of loosey-goosey. But in the end, of course, I just stuck to the script because the script was a lot better than anything I could have come up with. So, it depends. There's certainly, I mean, there are... I find in television, they're a bit more strict. And I think that's because there's a huge time... There's a time component. They've got to get they've got to get everything shot within a certain amount of time, and so. But it's usually it's very collaborative most of the time.
Film, television, stage. How do you prepare differently for each of those?
That's an interesting question, because I think. Essentially, it's the same, in a way. The circumstances are different, and the work conditions are different, but the job itself is essentially the same. You reach the point where you've got to make a choice as to how you do this. The nice thing about stage work, of course, is you've got a nice, you might have like a nice 3-4 week rehearsal period where you can stop and chat and work things out, and it's and you come to it from a very kind of organic place. But very often on film or television, if you're not playing the lead role and you haven't been involved in the process, very often I've done movies where I've just been the hired gun. I just get hired, and I'm there for a week or 5 days, and I just come and do my thing. And then, of course, what I do then is I just try and learn my lines as well as I can, and get a chance to have a chat with the director if possible, and get a sense of what they want, and then just do what I think is hopefully the best version of that I can give, but always to stay open to adjustments and so on. And I think that's why I've always regarded what I do as a craft. You know, there are certain skills and rules and ways of doing things, in my view, that you have to observe, and hopefully, get the job done.
Is there anything you haven't done that you'd like to do in terms of roles, genres, locations?
There's an old actor's joke about the perfect part is to play someone who's bedridden on a Caribbean cruise. So it's like, you spend the whole shoot in bed, in a nice. No, actually, no. I tell you what, I used to have dreams like that. I used to, when I was younger, I used to have, I want to play this part, I want to play this kind of part. But as I've played a really interesting range of parts, and I've been a lover, I've been a villain, I've been the comedy foil, I've been the mate next door. I've done all kinds of roles that really all I'm interested now is if I read a part and it kind of goes, oh, yeah, I could do something with this, and it doesn't have to be a leading role. It can be a war. I mean, when I did first time I worked with Ira Sachs on Love is Strange, playing a leading part opposite John Lithgow. It was a wonderful, wonderful movie. The next time I worked for Ira, I did literally a 4-line role. Just because I wanted to be in his world, and I wanted to kind of, I wanted that experience again, and so it's whatever comes up, and at the same time, it's always nice to be working. It's I learned that from my dad. My dad. I came home one day from school, and I had a black eye. And my dad saw it, and he said, "Well, what happened?" I said, "Oh, got into a, And I thought he was going to be sympathetic, and he wasn't. He just said, he said, real men don't get into fights. Real men pay their bills." And I was 11. I didn't know from paying bills. So at the time I didn't quite get it, but I understood. I understand now. And I understood very early on when I started working. That was my only criteria, was to stay employed. It always has been, and it's it's not very interesting, but that's what's driven me.
And we'll be right back. Let me ask you, throw out a couple of characters you've played, and just give me your impressions. Tevye in Fiddler on the Roof.
Yeah, fantastic year doing that. It was that was a real bonus. I couldn't believe my luck when I got that, and it was a joy. Hard work, and it was so satisfying, and it's still one of my fondest memories. I'm still friends with people I met on that movie, on that show, and it was just a wonderful experience, and it came at just the right time in my life. I felt I was the right age. I felt I came with the right kind of experience. It was just fantastic.
What about playing Diego Rivera?
Well, that was the first time I worked with Julie Taymor. That was an interesting film, and a fantastic job. I loved it. It was slightly fraught at the time because we were working under tough conditions. We didn't really have the kind of budget that the film deserved, so people were working long hours and trying to get a lot done with not enough money. But what made it so special was Salma Hayek.
She was one of the producers.
She was. And in order to make sure that we got the budget we did, she had to make a deal with the Weinstein Company to do all these other movies for them. And she was the single most loyal person I think I've ever worked with. She had the cast she wanted. It was like a good year and a half before we shot the movie. I was working on a play on Broadway, and she came to the theatre to see the play, and she came backstage and she gave me a script, an early version of the script for Frida, and she said, "I'd love you to be my Diego." And then she told me that she was going to play Frida. She was producing the film, and I was very touched. I said, "Yes, of course, I'll read it." I read the first version. It was okay, but she did say that we're still working on it, but and then for at least a good year, she was trying to raise the money, and she had the cast she wanted. She wanted me. She wanted Jeffrey Rush, Roger Rees. She wanted Valeria Golino, Saffron Burrows. She absolutely knew the cast she wanted, and of course the Weinstein Company, they wanted big names. So they were trying to, they say, "Oh, we should get De Niro for this and blah 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 for that," And she dug her heels in and said, "No, this is the film I want to make. These are the people I want to make it with." And I'd never really experienced that kind of loyalty from anyone, and it was a real, I won't hear a bad word again. I won't hear a negative word about her. The woman is a phenomenon. She's just fantastic, and she held that whole thing together. We went through more than one possible director, went through all kinds of changes in the script. It was just, it was amazing.
How do you feel about awards?
Love them. I love them. Try not to think about them, but sometimes that's hard because it's really funny how people, if you give a performance that people are enjoying, that people are that makes a bit of a splash, you're doing something in the theatre that sells out, people are buying tickets to go and see it. You make a movie and the movie does really, really well. The first thing that comes up is, so you think you might be might get a nomination for this or a nomination for that, and it's very hard to stay separate from that circus, and of course that awards are lovely. There's no doubt. I mean, anyone who kind of goes, "Oh, I don't want any awards," they're lying through their teeth. Of course they're lovely. They're lovely. Great parties. People make a fuss of you. You get dressed up. Everyone tells you you're brilliant. It's great. They're great fun. But if that's the reason that you're doing it, if that's the reason that you're working, if that's the reason that's driving you, the thing I remember an actor getting really upset when he said that he was offered this role and he wasn't sure about it, and he said that he ended up, I won't name any names, it's not fair, but he ended up doing it because he felt pressured, but in the doing of it, he was very unhappy because the way he was pressured was that he was kept on being told by people, this could be your Oscar. This is your Oscar. This is an Oscar. This is an Oscar-winning role, and the pressure from his agent, So in the end, he ended up doing it, and didn't get the Oscar, and so he went into this job with the worst, what he felt was the worst kind of frame of mind. And and I think there's there's no point being kind of precious about them. I mean, I've been nominated for a few things over the years. I've won a couple of little gongs here and there. And it's great. It's lovely. It's a really nice thing. But it's not the be all and end all. And also, it's. I mean, I can't name people who won their prizes from 3-4 years ago. I can't remember. And I think that's the same for most of us, unless you're a student of the fact. But it's so in the end, the importance of awards, I think, is not apart from the parties, and getting getting your ass kissed a few times. Apart from that, and the swag bags.
Oh, yeah.
The swag bags are great. But apart from that, I think the whole award industry is really for other people. I don't think it's for the performers at all.
Do you watch the shows?
Not much. Not much. And I was on the board of governors of the Academy for 3 years, and I'm very proud of that. But I've been to a couple of Oscar ceremonies, but I don't watch the Oscar show itself very often.
Any particular reason?
Because I don't know. I just it's kind of I don't know why.
Don't offend anyone.
Well, no, it's not. No, it's. I don't know. No, I certainly wouldn't want to do that. But it's not out of any. It's not out of any sense of like, this is all nonsense. It's not that. It's very important. It's if you're in there, if you're in that moment, it's a huge. And I certainly wouldn't take any of that away from people. But I wait till the next day, and I'll go through I'll read the list in the papers, and I'll be cheering for people. And of course, there'll be friends or maybe colleagues involved, and I'll kind of say, yeah, I'm rooting for you.
What's the best piece of acting advice you ever received?
Ooh, I think there's quite a few bits of advice I've received over the years that I remember, but I do remember one piece of advice about auditioning, and because I used, as a very young actor, I used to make the terrible mistake of hoping that in the moment of that audition, like the moment that I finished doing my scene or doing my piece that I've prepared, that I'm suddenly going to get, yes, it's you, we want you. Like there was going to be some wonderful moment of revelation, and they were all going to sit there kind of going, that's it, that you're our guy. In my dreams, that would be, and I found myself I would do the audition and I would kind of hope for some kind of response, which you very rarely get. And of course, it would always leave me a little deflated. And I was saying this to one of my old teachers. And I remember him saying, no. You go in there, you do your bit, and you get out of there like you've got somewhere better to be. And that completely revolutionized my attitude. And the other bit of advice he gave me was go to the audition with a nice shirt on and a jacket. Don't do all this nonsense about dressing up like the character, like some idea of what you think the character might look like. You're up for a part of some unhoused guy, so you turn up looking like crap. No. You said no. You turn up. You've got some. So you do. Thank you very much, and get out of there. And I tell you, that's a good bit of advice. I passed that bit of advice on.
Was there ever a moment when you thought about giving up the profession?
Loads.
Really?
Yeah, loads.
That surprises me.
Yeah. Yeah. There are there are times when things don't go right, or you feel sort of, I don't know, like it's not working, and I've always been very I've always been a bit impulsive like that, but also whenever I've had those thoughts, I've thought about giving up, I've thought about quitting, but I've never done it. I think because it's an impulse, it's a reaction to something, and I have to what I learned from it is trying to understand why that happened. What was it about this particular moment that made me feel that way? And it's usually to do with some inadequacy of mine. It's usually to do with some kind of lack of understanding about something. I remember right from the start. When I left drama school, we all had to go in for a one-on-one with the dean, who would give us his last bit of kind of advice, and he said to me, "Don't be surprised if you don't start working until you're well into your 30s." And that was his bit of advice. You're not, and he was basically saying you're not leading man material. That was something else that I heard at one point. And you kind of, and that stuff sticks. You know, it can hurt and it can stick, and you kind of go, oh, you know, and there's always. I've noticed that the moments when I've thought, oh, maybe this is too much, has usually been when I've been trying to deal with a sense of failure, like I've failed or I haven't quite done as well as I should, and maybe it's time to. But then, you know, something else will come up, and you know, it's a lot of. I've thought about it, but never done it.
I may be overstepping my bounds, but have you ever thought about seeing a therapist?
Oh yeah, I'm seeing a therapist.
Oh, good for you. I strongly believe in that.
Oh yeah. I mean, there's no. I think it's, you know, I'm not trying to say, oh, you know, I'm a special case in any way. No, but I think these sort of anxieties are all part of an actor's DNA. I think, you know,
all actors.
I think so. I think there's a. I've got this theory. I don't know if, you know, it's not completely non-scientific, but I've got this theory that acting, being an actor, is the result of a genetic flaw. That we have a gene missing, and the process of wanting to be an actor is an attempt somehow to fill that gap, to find that gene that completes the circle. And so we're starting. You know, who knows? I could be talking complete bollocks. I don't know, but I feel like we're starting from a point of trying to kind of fix it, trying to fix something.
You recognize your flaws, and you want to.
And we're trying to deal with them. We're trying to fix them. And I mean, look at it this way: all the best stories, I'm sure you've heard actors getting together and chatting about the work and their careers and blah blah. All the best stories, all the best tales from the trenches. You know, oh, I remember the time. None of them, the best ones, none of them end with lines like, "And then I got a great review." None of them. They're all about disasters, humiliations, betrayals, you know, failures. It's all about that. And I think that's part of why we do it. I think it's part of our, you know, it's part of this need that we have, you know.
I'm going to have to re-examine myself. What's a role you never got to play but still dream about?
Oof. I dream about maybe one day playing King Lear, but to be honest, I don't think I've quite got what it takes. What I would love to do. I would love to do something really silly, like a really kind of all-out, silly kind of broad comedy. You mean like
Monty Python type broad?
Yeah, kind of. You know, sort of. You know, one of my favorite actors from the old days is well, there are two actually that I absolutely adore. One was Anthony Quinn, who, for me, was like just one of the great character actors of all time. And to see him in the role he played in Lawrence of Arabia, you know, I don't mean that kind of ethnic role. Mm-hmm. I don't mean that, but that kind of scale of role, you know, that kind of character would be a wonderful thing to play. But you know, it's at the same time, you know, we dream, but the thing is, the next job that comes up will probably be just as exciting. You know, the next job that comes up will hopefully, you know, be the one that keeps me awake at night, that, you know, that I'll be dreaming about. It's an almost impossible question to answer.
Well, then let me ask you this. Is there a moment in your career that you would like to relive?
Well, I tell you what, the feeling I got, yeah, it's interesting. The feeling I got when I first walked onto the set of Raiders, when I realized that I was going to be a professional actor in films. I was actually going to make a film. That singular moment was intoxicating. It was absolutely intoxicating, and I've never forgotten it. Just standing on this, I came onto the set at Elstree Studios, and and it was the first day we did the scene with all the spiders, and it was full of wonder and anxiety, and I was, spiders, I was kind of just completely, just completely sort of in it, and that feeling of just giving yourself to it without any judgment, without any constraint, without any, resistance. Just, yes, this is, and that was a really powerful moment, and I still get that little buzz when I walk onto a set. I still get that little tickle that tells you, we're in for something.
This is going to be fun.
Yeah, this is going to be this is going to be fun. Yeah.
Thank you. I've had a good time. I've really enjoyed this.
Oh, thank you.
You gathered with the CADS guys, don't you? For
dinner?
Yeah.
You know about the CADS?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Well,
we've had almost every one of them on the show.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, it all started as a very loose thing. There was. I've got a photo of the very first dinner that we had. It was. I think it was either at the Smokehouse or maybe that was the second one. And it was just a group of chums, that we all sort of knew each other in various ways. And it really was just a chance to kind of have a dinner and just, shoot the shit and, have some fun. And then it kind of grew, and there's a sort of hardcore of maybe 10 or 12 of us. And it's been a wonderful, it's just a group of colleagues and chums, and, and because there's all sorts of interconnected relationships, no one's kind of on the outside. Everybody belongs to someone else in some way, or so we have a lot of things in common, and it's a wonderful moment. The dinners we have, or the lunches we get to. I mean, sometimes it might just be four of us. Somebody might say, "Hey, I'm in LA, for breakfast. Are you free?" And then 4 or 5 people might turn up. Or it might be 10 of us, around a big table at some swanky place. But it's always a joy, because there's a great deal of love and mutual respect and admiration and understanding within the group. We've all been around a while. We've been around the block. We've all had good times and bad times. It's that's that great song, isn't it, from Follies?
Good times and bum times. I've seen them all, and my dear,
I'm
still here.
Yeah, and I think that's it. I think that should be our. If it hadn't been taken by someone else, that would be our ethos. It's and I think that gives us all and also there have been times when some among us have gone through something personal, something difficult, and we're always there to help and support, and it's a lovely, it's a beautiful thing. It's a big part of our lives, I think, and I'm sure I'm speaking for all of us. It's become a very important element in our lives.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Alfred.
My
I
pleasure.
really appreciate you coming in to sit down and
this has
talk
been-
with us.
This has been fun.
It's been very
Thank you.
entertaining.
Thank you.
Still Here Hollywood is a production of the Still Here Network. All things technical run by Justin Zangerly. Theme music by Brian Sanishin. And executive producer is Jim Lichtenstein.